Tonight, I would like to discuss a statement issued by Zimbabwe's Catholic bishops, in which they warned that the proposed constitutional amendment bill number 3 threatens Zimbabwe's democracy. For those of you who have not had the chance to read it, it is available on in New Zimbabwe, and I think Blue Air 24 has also covered it. It is worth reading. One thing to be noted there is it is saying what everybody else out there has been saying. There is no doubt that that amendment bill threatens Zimbabwe's democracy. That there cannot be any doubt. But what I want to do is take you back to 2023. Zimbabwe's Catholic bishops were among some of the Zimbabwean institutions that condemned Zimbabwe's 2023 elections. Others, like SADC and the AU, had also condemned those elections as flawed and illegal. It is important to understand that point. There is no doubt that Mnangagwa and the Zanu PF regime is illegitimate. There's no doubt about it. They violated the democratic wishes of the people of Zimbabwe and imposed themselves as the new regime. My argument to the bishops, like everybody else, has been to see the reality that when Zanu PF rigged those elections, Mnangagwa himself acknowledged that those elections were not free, fair, and credible, acknowledged the damning reports from SADC, the AU, and other organizations. His strategy was to divert attention away from the rigged elections. And that's why he introduced this ED 2030 agenda. And to put it in a simplistic form, what he was saying is, forget that I rigged the elections. What I'm going to do is extend my stay in office beyond even the 2028 term limit that is imposed on me by the Constitution. That term limit applied whether he was legally elected or not. But it becomes even more important when you consider that he had rigged the elections. But it was necessary for him to throw that into the ring because it drew attention away from the fact that he is illegitimate. And that point has been made several times. What is disappointing here is that Zimbabwe's Catholic bishops failed to see that bait. And like many other people, they've swallowed the bait, the hook, the line and the sinker. That is the problem here. Welcome to the program, Ben.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. I believe for you to lose something, you must have had it in the first place. Now, in Zimbabwe's case, we know Zimbabwe is not a democratic country. Holding elections, does not give you that title. Holding free, fair, and credible elections will. And Zimbabwe has never held free, fair, and credible elections. And you are right to note that even the SADC Observer Mission and the Catholic bishops stated that the elections were not free, fair, and credible, which means they were not democratic. That is a simple term. So if we say it threatens Zimbabwe's democracy, what democracy is then the next question? Because the last time you said it wasn't free, and once it's not free, it means it's not democratic. And the problem here is that a lot of people and a lot of Zimbabweans out there really do not get that participating in rigged elections is got absolutely nothing to do with your will and your say. We know Zanu PF rigs elections. You don't have to even go far. Zimbabwe itself, they do not even have a verified voters roll. That basic document is not there. If you wanted to vote, you will probably find that your name is not there and your late ancestors are there. Yet this is supposed to be a newer document, an updated document. You look at the rural areas where people are forced because of hunger. If you do not, have a Zanu PF card, you do not attend Zanu PF meetings, you do not vote Zanu PF, you're not going to get any, food and other, help that people get in those areas. And last time in 2023, they took it a step further that before you entered the voting, the polling station to go and cast your vote, you first of all had to pass through, a fast a toll booth and have your details taken down and everything like that. Just outside the polling station, which is illegal, which is against the constitution itself. So you have to have had something for you to lose it. And Zimbabwe was they never had democracy. So we cannot say they lost it or it threatens it when we never had it in the first place.
Just want to remind any one of the listeners out there who want to join us that you can use the link on the screen there to join us. We would like to welcome and hear your views on the issue. And to come back to this Catholic bishop's warning, let's remind ourselves again that it's not me, it is them who did condemn 2023 elections as flawed and illegal, and therefore not the democratic wish of the people of Zimbabwe. What I believe they should have pursued then is making sure that Zanu PF does not get away with another rigged election. In other words, that Zimbabwe is not stuck with an illegitimate regime again. Because this is not the first time Zanu PF has rigged elections. This has been happening ever since, in fact, the country's independence in 1980. But this time, 2023, they should have put their foot down and said, enough is enough. You are illegitimate. You should not be in power. And focus on that. There is a proverb in English that says a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. I believe pursuing Zanu PF's illegitimacy was the bird in hand. Zanu PF throw into the ring this proposal that Mnangagwa wants to stay beyond 2028. That was the bird, not two birds in the bush. It was 200 birds, 2,000 even birds in the bush. That's how outrageous that position was. Here is a regime that has just rigged the elections. The president has served the maximum of 2 terms. And he has got the audacity to suggest that he's going to stay beyond the 2-term limits. That was so outrageous. The people fell for it. But that is exactly what Zanu PF wanted you to do. You thought by abandoning, pursuing Zanu PF's illegitimacy as a result of rigging 2023, you're doing even better by stopping Zanu PF pushing through this amendment number 3. What you're forgetting here is that actually pursuing this illegitimacy would have highlighted even more the pathetic position that an illegitimate regime is now seeking to extend its stay in office. You're already illegitimate. How can you extend your stay in office? But by falling for the amendment itself, it is now assumed that Zanu PF and Mnangagwa are legitimately elected as of 2023. That was one of the biggest mistakes of falling for it. One of the things one can expect is that, yes, the ordinary people can easily be conned and lose sight of it. They forget about pursuing this issue of Zanu PF being illegitimate as it is now, and are fooled by a promise of the 200 birds in the bush. But I did not expect the Catholic bishops to be so easily conned too. And what is more, this is not the first time Zanu PF has used this strategy. It has used it again and again. Zanu PF, like I said, has been rigging elections ever since the country's independence 46 years ago. And they've always managed to get away with it because it has conned people into pursuing other things, other issues. For instance, since 2000, the issue of the land was put on the national agenda to supersede the fact that the country was failing to hold free and fair elections. Towards the elections, the farm invasion flared up. And so instead of concentrating on making sure elections are free, fair, and credible, the nation was forced to concentrate on the farm invasion. And by the time people realized Zanu PF was rigging the elections, it was too late. So the important point I'm emphasizing here is that Zanu PF has conned the people into believing that the bird in hand, i.e., pursuing Zanu PF's illegitimacy, failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections, is not as important as pursuing this amendment number 3, proposing to give Zanu PF even greater powers. That is a serious mistake.
I agree with you there to say, Zanu PF has always been smart enough to create a current agenda, something or a current crisis, something that will divert the attention away from the primary cause of all our wars. And the primary cause of all our wars is that Zanu PF rigs elections. And there is desperate need for reform. And each and every time we are told or the reforms are spoken about by the international community and many other organizations out there, Zanu PF will give us a decoy so that we run with it. And this has been going on time and time again. So we're basically going round and round in circle, chasing the next thing. And when you ask people out there, they will tell you that it's best we deal with what is happening now because it threatens our democracy. And then it comes back to the same question that I was asking, or that I said, for you to lose something, you got to have had it in the first place. And Zimbabwe has never had free, fair, and credible elections. Zimbabwe has never been a democratic country. We have never had one man, one vote. And that is the crisis. All other things are coming because we do not have a government that is for the people and by the people. And as long as we keep on postponing the primary purpose, we will always have many secondary issues to debate and discuss and fight. We may win this 2030 amendment. We may win it. But in 2028, we will be stuck with yet another Zanu PF dictator. Whether it be Chiwenga or whoever, they will be the same. I honestly do not believe we can have good leadership out of this toxic environment. Whoever is going to come into this here position will also want these favorable conditions because they favor the incumbent. they will also want to keep this alive, and they would want to maximize their own, stay. We have seen this in many countries where there have been, military coups when somebody wanted to extend their term, and the next guy that came in also did the same thing, also tried to extend their term. You cannot get, good fish out of a sewage pond. What Zimbabwe needs is to fix a broken system, realign and create new, stronger institutions, institutions that will preserve a democracy. Then whoever wants to come and compete, they can do freely. It's not about, closing the door for anyone's presidential candidate of their choice. It's not about that. The people of Zimbabwe are free to choose whoever they want. But what we are saying is you need to at least give your candidate a fighting chance. Because as things stand, Zanu PF has already won the 2028 election, if there's going to be an election. And many other elections ahead, they have already won it. Look at just the composition of ZEC itself. It's Zanu PF children to the T. Everything in there is Zanu PF children. The same surnames that are in Zanu PF are the same surnames that are there. And they have, it becomes very difficult to explain something that is so clear. That people of Zimbabwe should be able to see, even the simple mind should be able to see that this, I'll give you an example of OK Grand Challenge. If you work in OK, you cannot participate in that Grand Challenge because it becomes biased. Those are rules. So how does Zanu PF children become head of ZEC? Which is supposed to be an independent body. So we cannot say it threatens our democracy. For me, I find it very ridiculous to say it threatens our democracy, a democracy that we never had. You have to have had something for you to lose it. That is my point. And I believe, the Catholic bishops there, once they took the position and stated that the 2023 elections were not free, fair, and credible, they closed the door on democracy. They closed the door on democracy, which means that we didn't have it. It was not a democratic process. So where does then, if you don't have it, where does it threaten the very existence of democracy? You've got to have something to lose it.
The other point that I said was fighting the legitimacy of Zanu PF was a bird in hand, and it was worth the 200 birds in the bush. Is the very fact that as much as the bishops and everybody else acknowledges that Zanu PF rigged the 2023 elections and also blatantly rigged elections in the past. If the regime can rig elections, it can rig a referendum or the process associated with pushing through this amendment number 3. We are already seeing evidence of that. The amendment has already been tabled in Parliament and is supposed to go through a public consultation period of 90 days. we are already on something like 57 days left. That process has been violent. The people have never been given a real meaningful opportunity to express their views. The Catholic bishops are not the only ones who have said this amendment will undermine democracy in Zimbabwe. Others, like opposition leaders like Laf Mumaduku, have said the same thing, and they've been punished for saying it. The regime has stifled all opportunities for a meaningful debate on that constitution. Clear signs that the regime intends to steamroll this amendment through. In other words, the people are fighting to stop amendment number 3 being enacted. A fight which they're almost certain to lose. Because Zanu PF does not fight clean. Zanu PF has no intention of fighting clean. If Zanu PF was to lose this referendum, this amendment number 3, let's be clear what the nation would have gained. The only thing the nation would say we have gained is that they've stopped Mnangagwa staying in office beyond 2028. Everything else, nothing. We will still have a Zanu PF dictatorship with all its overwhelming powers to rig elections. That is a fact. If the regime is able to steamroll the reforms, so the amendment number 3, then Mnangagwa will stay in office beyond 2028. And the regime, Zanu PF, will have even more dictatorial powers than it has right now. How can we compare that with if we had retained our focus on Zanu PF rigged 2023 elections? The regime is illegitimate. And we fought that with everything we have, with a view of underlining the fact that the regime is illegitimate and that we are not going to keep on participating in a flawed process only to give the regime legitimacy. Zanu PF would be panicked because even this amendment, people will be saying, we are not interested in that amendment. You are illegitimate. You don't even have the right to extend your stay in office to beyond 2028 because you are illegitimate as of now. You want us to negotiate what else you should do beyond 2028? No, we want to talk about now. That is what we would have gained. Just want to remind some of the people out there of what Ben was talking about regarding ZEC, for instance. Here is Professor Jonathan Moyo underlining the very fact that ZEC, as it is presently constituted, can never, ever deliver free, fair, and credible elections.
Chigumba is the mother of the rigging, and Malaba is the father of the rigging, endorsed what the mother was doing. It is actually scandalous. You see, ZEC is not supposed to be controlled by any authority.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
independent. It is an independent constitutional body. In fact, independent commission. It's a Chapter 12 institution. But ZEC did not run anything important. It never did. The computers were run by Africom. The registration, accreditation, and so forth were run by a CIO company. So between the CIO and the army, they ran the processes, the operations, using their instruments. Either Matsanga, who is actually active, she's employed. She joined the, she was not joined, she was seconded to the electoral body in 2008 as a divisional intelligence officer. Now she is a director in the CIO. As we speak right now, she's a director, and she was congratulated and rewarded for rigging the 2018 election. And she was given a house in Borodale, a posh mansion in there. So there is a serious problem that whereas on paper, ZEC is supposed to be an independent constitutional body that runs elections transparently, efficiently, and impartially. No, it doesn't. It doesn't because it does not even itself run. The elections are run for ZEC by the Securocrat.
The bottom line is, even if we stop amendment number 3 going through, we will still have the same compromised ZEC running the 2028 elections. Because we have done nothing to address those problems, which is what we should have been focusing on right now. And with ZEC, the judiciary, the police, etc., with all this overwhelming ability to rig the elections, Zanu PF, I can rest assure you, will rig the 2028 elections. So the bishops, the Catholic bishops, will be coming out with the same report that the elections were rigged. And if they don't fight and say, no, we must put an end to this, we'll be back into the same cycle again. This is why it has been absolutely important that we focus on the present elections, 2023, and fight to make sure that this regime is reminded that it is illegitimate and those problems must be addressed.
You know, the South African authorities, you know, just last year, they opened up a case, you know, against Chivayos, you know, and you know, illegal transactions, and within those transactions, they found that monies that were supposed to have been paid up for, you know, ballot papers had ended up being, you know, deposited in different ZEC official, accounts. And one of those officials was Ichigumba. She got a payout from those transactions. So again, you got to have had something for you to lose it. And I find it very, very annoying and disturbing at the same time that a lot of Zimbabweans out there believe that Zimbabwe is a democratic country. Zimbabwe is not a democratic country. Zimbabwe has never had free, fair, and credible elections. So we never had it. What we are supposed to be doing is, again, trying to find a democracy, trying to get ourselves democracy. And the only possible way is by reforming a system that is broken, by mending and changing the whole system. And this is why you find that after every election, we are given reports. Those reports have got recommendations. It tells us where we lost it. And then it gives us the recommendations, which are the corrections that you need to do. And we have always ignored those recommendations. And without doing any corrections, we have gone into another election. It's the same like a child that has failed grade 1, proceeding to grade 2, grade 3, until form 4, your final exam, or I can't see form 5, because you don't get there. When you get to form 4, you are going to fail because you have not done any correction. So it was a waste of time. So for 46 years, Zimbabweans have been participating in rigged elections, hoping to pass the final, hoping to pass or change, their future. You cannot. You have to do the corrections for you to learn and fix a broken system. And everybody that says this 2030 threatens our democracy, it's clearly you do not know what democracy is and what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. It clearly shows. So again, for you to have lost something, you got to have had it in the first place. You can't lose something you don't have.
So the message here is as much as some people would want us to believe that fighting to stop this amendment number 3 is a done deal, the truth of the matter is it is not. There is a lot of things that can go wrong here. And one of them is, of course, what I've mentioned before, that if Zanu PF can rig general elections, which are subject to more stringent rules, subject to international observers, what more of a referendum? What more of a process in which there is no referendum, which is what Zanu PF is pushing right now, that there's no need for a referendum. The regime can easily rig that process. And that is the reality that we have got to deal with. Now that we have been sucked into participating in it, if we lose, we have to accept the results. Here is one opposition leader, Tendai Biti, assuring the nation that they would win this, stop this amendment number 3 going through.
That is to say, 2/3 in the National Assembly and 2/3 in the Senate. It must then go to a referendum, because it is a bill altering term limits in the country. The referendum is a simple process, Baba. The referendum simply asks whether you are saying yes or no. Because we are going to campaign and live in the mountains to get that no vote. There's a second problem. The Constitution then says, when you change this Constitution and you remove the term limits, it doesn't benefit the incumbent.
It benefits the next.
It benefits the next. But you can change that provision.
Same process.
Yeah, we call it the Abdoulaye Wade provision. Because President Abdoulaye Wade amended the Constitution for a third time, and Senegalese said, it can't benefit you. And he lost at that stage. And that's why President Sall came in. And as fat as Yazid, as you know, President Macky Sall also tried to change the Constitution to benefit him. Yet he came through a process of rejecting a third term agenda. Right. That's why you can't trust people. But anyway, to come back to the legal process. Another referendum is required now to change the constitutional provision that says you can't benefit. That's when we will see Trababal's true colors, because all along you'll be saying, I don't want Vandova Akuda. Now when he says, now the Akuda, the constitution has to go to a referendum for the second time. Baba, pakaipa. Tusangana makomo. Tusangana kwa Chendabwe. Tusangana ku Lotito. Tusangana ku Eskodini. Tusangana ku Binga. Tusangana ku Cholocho. He can't win those referendums. He cannot win those referendums.
Okay.
So to put it very crudely, the idea of a third term agenda is fraught with such legal landmines that you would have to be so ambitious, so insane, so drunk, or both to ever think that it can actually carry out and see the light of the day.
The tragedy is opposition leaders like Tendai Biti did not have to climb mountains. Cholocho, Ubinga, Kwachenda Mbuya during the GNU, when they had the opportunity to implement the democratic reforms which would have ended the Zanu PF dictatorship. They had the golden opportunity to implement those reforms without going to all those lengths. They did not implement even one token reform. And so the opportunity to stop and end the Zanu PF dictatorship was lost. And yet, now they want to make us believe that they will go the extra mile to stop amendment number 3. And what is to be gained by stopping? I repeat, amendment number 3 does not take away any of these super duper powers that Zanu PF already enjoys. That has enabled Zanu PF to rig elections again and again for the last 46 years. Amendment number 3 is only seeking to extend, to allow Mnangagwa to stay in office for another 2 years, and also to give the regime additional dictatorial powers, including the power that from now on the president will not be elected by the people. It will be the parliament that will elect him, plus other additional powers, which are really meant to consolidate Zanu PF's iron grip on power. Those are additional powers. That's the distinction, over and above all these other dictatorial powers that they have. I was talking to one of my friends this afternoon, and we're talking about that very issue, the additional dictatorial powers. And he was saying those additional powers will only help to move Zimbabwe even closer to North Korea than it is now. But let me emphasize the point. Zimbabwe is not a democracy, as Ben has been trying to say again and again throughout this discussion. It is not a democracy already. It has not reached the level of North Korea, but we are going there. Stopping Zanu PF getting additional powers is not the same thing as ending Zanu PF's dictatorial powers that they have right now. This is why it has been so important to focus on stopping Zanu PF or ending Zanu PF's dictatorial powers now, which we had a fair chance of winning if we pursued it, rather than focus on let's stop Zanu PF getting additional powers, which, like I said, the regime has the ability to rig the process and so may deliver that. We should not have abandoned our present stand position of Zanu PF rigged 2023 elections. The regime is illegitimate. Let's deal with this problem. And most significantly, how are we going to make sure that we don't repeat the same mistake of 2023? And the mistake of 2023 was participating in a flawed process because we had believed idiotic lies from the likes of Chamisa that he is going to win those elections. He was lying, and we are paying for it. That is the problem we should be discussing right now as well.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifo iri. Plan ya Mwari haifo iri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
My last word on the opposition is that all those oppositions right now who are telling the nation that we are going to stop this amendment number 3, whether they succeed or not, there is one thing that we can all be certain of. They will participate in the next elections, even if not even one token reform has been implemented. For the same reason they've participated in flawed elections in the past. They want their share of the spoils of power. And to go back to the Catholic bishops, it is surprising and disappointing that they failed to see Zanu PF's machinations, and they also failed to see the opposition political machinations.
I would want to close by saying it is unfortunate that we gave a task to the opposition to implement reforms or clean out our institutions and build us proper and bigger and stronger institutions. It is unfortunate that we gave them that task because they have failed to deliver on all fronts, basically. For 26 years, they have been in the picture and not even one reform has been set in place. But rather, they have been very much willing to violate the constitution with Zanu PF by participating or by giving people rigged elections. And unfortunately, the people have been also slow to figure that out. So in as much as we would want to stop this amendment 2030, yes, it is a very, illegal process and it violates the constitution. I get that. But the question is, even if we stop it, are we all going to be violating the constitution in 2028? Because from what we have been given, from the reports that we have been given, from the evidence that is there on the ground, our election process falls short of the state or the said, requirements from our constitution. So we are stopping Zanu PF from violating the constitution alone, but we will be willing to violate it together. And that is the truth. Because as long as we do not fix the problems that are there in our election process, we will be violating the constitution of Zimbabwe. So we'll actually be just as guilty as Zanu PF. And knowing most of all these guys that are singing to say we will go to the mountains, we will fight this and that, they will not be fighting when it comes to 2028 election. They will not be fighting, but rather encouraging us. Let us go. Dengaratao. That is what they will be saying. So this is where I leave you with a question to say, stopping the 2030 amendment is a good thing. But if we win it, what then next? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. In my closing remarks, I would like to focus on the reality that to those who have been given, be it talents, power, authority, a lot is expected. We have the Catholic bishops. I salute them for having again and again in the past condemned Zimbabwe's failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. But it is on the basis of that very reality that to those to whom a lot was given, a lot is expected, that I would also criticize them. They should be smart enough to realize that Zanu PF is taking advantage of the people. They should be smart enough to realize that Zanu PF has been playing the long-term game. The proverb, a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. They have twisted it around for their own selfish ends. They've twisted it to the point where they are convincing the people to give up the bird in hand on the promise of a better future. This whole ED 2030 is based on the argument that Mnangagwa would deliver an upper middle income nation by 2030. This whole amendment is based on another twist of that proverb. Forget about the rigged elections of 2023. I'm going to extend my stay in office beyond 2028. And so the people have focused on this mirage of Mnangagwa staying in office, which he can still attain, by the way, whether we fight to stop him or not, because he can rig elections. He has that power to rig elections, to rig the process. When we should have been focusing on what we could achieve, what is there, what we have the evidence for. Like I said, SADC in the AU, election observers, also condemned 2023 elections. That is what strategic thinking is all about. Yes, the ordinary people may fail to do so, but we expect leaders like the Catholic bishops to realize what is going on here. It is often said you can fool some people all the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And I think the last bit, Zanu PF has been able to do so for the last 46 years. Because even those to whom a lot has been given have themselves been fooled by Zanu PF. Not once, but again and again and again. That is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.